Hey everyone, and thanks for jumping back into the Cryptoverse. Today, we're going to talk about Bitcoin, and we're going to be looking at monthly returns. If you guys like the content, make sure you subscribe to the channel, give the video a thumbs up, and also check out the sale on Into the Cryptoverse Premium at intothecryptoverse.com. Let's go ahead and jump in. So, in the past, we've talked about how there's very cyclical nature to Bitcoin. And in the same way, we had a bear market in 2014, 2018, and 2022, we also saw relatively sideways years in 2015 and 2019. To help you better understand how this is sort of reflected with regards to monthly returns, what you'll notice is if you go look at, say, 2014, you'll see that we had about, I believe, 8 red months. So in 2014, only 4 of the months actually were green. Furthermore, in 2018, you'll notice we only had 3 green months, right? So in 2014, we had 9 red months, or in 2014, we had 8 red months. In 2018, we had 9 red months. And then in 2022, we had 8 red months again. So this is very, reflective of just a bear market year where you essentially have, most of the year, except for maybe 3 or 4 months, most of them are red, right? Most of them are red. But then it sort of raises the question, well, what do we normally see in years following these years where Bitcoin just tends to go down 8 or 9 months? And what you'll notice in 2015 is while there was some further red, I mean, it's not like we get out of the bear market year and then it's just roses for the next year. But what you will notice is that it's a bit more even, right? So in 2015, you'll notice that we had about 5 red months, right? In 2019, we had 6 red months. So rather than just seeing it very lopsided to the down direction in terms of monthly returns, we actually saw it a bit more even. So remember, 2014, 2018, and 2022, they were all about 8 or 9 red months for that year, whereas 2015 and 2019 were more about 5 or 6 red months for that year. Now, of course, a lot of people ask constantly, will Bitcoin eventually go lower than where it currently is? And we only have 2 examples to really look at, right? I mean, we have 2015 and 2019. And in 2015, we did go lower. And then in 2019, we did not. So it's important to recognize we don't really have a ton of data points. Of course, there are some indicators that suggest we could eventually go lower. But again, in the grand scheme of things, when you think about the years after bear market years, we don't really tend to go much of anywhere, right? And so that's really probably the bigger point to sort of understand is that, in 2019, we went up for a while, but then we sort of faded that rally in the second half of the year. Whereas in 2015, we went down for a little bit, and then we sort of scraped the bottom for a while, and then at the very end of the year, we slowly went up. So regardless of the direction that Bitcoin goes in the short term, I would anticipate that by the end of the year, the market is still going to be probably not too dissimilar from where it is today. Now, that doesn't mean it couldn't be lower, it couldn't be higher, but I just don't see us going into a sustained bull run to new highs in 2023. I know this is something that I see some people talking about and hoping that we'll see new all-time highs this year. Unfortunately, I don't see that as a high likelihood, especially within the context of the macro conditions that we face. Now, it doesn't mean that Bitcoin won't be able to go on a bull run, like 2024, 2025 timeframe. But, history does show us that the year after these primary bear market years, being 2014 and 2018, and now potentially 2022, the market is rather boring, right? And it's about half and half. Half the months tend to be green, about half the months tend to be red. In 2015, we started off with 31% to the downside, right? That marked the market cycle bottom, right? That marked the market cycle bottom. It was like the last major capitulation, and then it was over. And then that was basically all we had in terms of further downside for that year. And then out of that, we just had a very slow recovery where we had a brief recovery in February to the tune of 16%. But then March, April, and May were all red. But again, we were still slowly climbing out of this sort of pit that we had dug ourselves. So again, I would say, as we continue to make our way into 2023, right now you can see that Bitcoin is up about 2 or 3% or so for the year. Obviously, not a whole lot. I mean, right now Bitcoin's coming in at just below $17,000. My general advice, of course, is not financial advice, is to just sort of temper your expectations for this year. Be prepared for probably about half the months to be red and half the months to be green, and then we'll look towards 2024, 2025 timeframe for hopefully a more sustained bull run. Again, if you look at average returns, you will see that in fact, it used to just be that September was the only month on average that was red, but now it's actually also August has been slightly red as well. Of course, we could make this so it only takes data from say 2014. There's a lot of crazy moves that happened really early on because Bitcoin's market cap was a lot smaller. If we just look at say averages from 2014, you'll see that September is still red, and then January and March on average are red, right? If you just look at from 2014 onward. But the good news, I suppose, is that April, May, June, July, and August tends to be a green. Tends to be green when you average it over several years. But just something I thought was an interesting way to look at the chart. We can also look at it as a heat map if you prefer. Let me change this back to 2010. So if you look at it like a heat map, you can maybe see the red months or the really down months a little bit easier. Obviously, June of 2022 was a pretty bad month. May of 2021 was a pretty bad month, and so on and so forth. This chart down here, was something that I put together. It's basically called like counting monthly returns. So the whole idea is we just add one anytime we have a green month, and we subtract one anytime we have a red month. And if you do that, you get something that looks like this, which is kind of interesting because, what it really shows is that for the first like 7 or 8 years of Bitcoin's existence, it really was having a lot more green months than red months. But really, ever since like 2018, we've actually been kind of stuck in this range, in fact. And you could actually see the lower count on the bottom down here is actually 16. So if you're curious where the current count is, it's actually at 18. Okay, so perhaps this is one of the more dubious ways to sort of measure Bitcoin's monthly returns. But if at some point this year we see this at 16, it would actually correspond to prior major lows. Not only would it correspond to January 2019, which would have been, that was just right after the December bottom, right? I mean, you have to get into January to know what the December return was. So this marked the market cycle bottom, coming out of December 2018. And then the next time we went that low was, wouldn't you know, March of 2020, right? So March of 2020 was the next time we went down to that count of 16. And currently the count is right around that 17, 18 mark. So not that far away from that 16 mark. We could also do it where we add one and subtract one if it's a 10% move or more to the upside, or plus or minus 2 if it's more than a 10% move to the upside. And if you do it like that, you get something that looks a little bit more bullish, right? Where, if you don't really care about the percent moves, then a plus 2% move is weighted the same as like a plus 20% move. But if you weight it a little bit, either being below 10% or above 10%, you get something that looks like this, right? Where it still has, the count has slowly trended higher. So the count here in January 2019 would have been 35, and then in March it was 38, and then recently it's just right around 44 or 45. But hopefully this video is somewhat useful in terms of understanding Bitcoin's historic monthly returns and kind of segmenting them based on bear market years, based on recovery years. Again, my general expectation is that 2023 is going to be a recovery year, not in the sense of us going to new all-time highs, but just in the sense of trying to carve out some macro bottom, right? I think that's sort of going to be the goal of 2023, and then 2024 we'll have the halving. We will likely have QE, and we'll likely have another bull run, right? Another cycle where crypto goes back up to the upside. But until that time, 2023, plenty of time before we get to that area. Hopefully you guys like the content. Remember to check out Into the Cryptoverse Premium at intothecryptoverse.com. We do have the sale still going on, so make sure you check that out. Make sure you subscribe if you're not subscribed. Give the video a thumbs up. I'll see you guys next time. Bye.